In April 1994, a 39-year-old Italian policeman named Mauro Prosperi was having the best race of his life. Not metaphorically, literally. He was running the Marathon des Sables, 156 miles across the Sahara Desert in Morocco, and on day 4 he was on pace, strong, focused, exactly where he wanted to be. He had trained for this for months, running 40 kilometers a day, deliberately reducing his water intake to train his body for dehydration. His wife had expressed concerns before he left. 3 young children at home, a husband about to run 156 miles across the Sahara. He had kissed them goodbye and flown to Morocco anyway. Because Mauro Prosperi was the specific kind of person who hears about the most difficult foot race on Earth and immediately starts training. At approximately 1 p.m. on April 14th, with 20 miles already behind him and the desert doing what deserts do in April, a sandstorm arrived. Not an inconvenient sandstorm, not the kind that passes in 20 minutes. A full-scale Saharan sandstorm that reduced visibility to 0, that lasted 8 hours, and that moved Mauro Prosperi, without him knowing, 180 miles off course, into Algeria. When the storm cleared, he looked around. The other runners were gone. The course markers were gone. The race was gone. He was alone in the Sahara Desert with supplies for 1 more day, and a desert in every direction that stretched in some directions for thousands of miles. And here is the question this story actually asks, not whether Mauro Prosperi survived. You already know he survived. The question is what a man discovers about himself when the desert takes everything and then offers him a choice between stopping and walking, and whether, if the desert offered you that same choice, you would know which one to pick. Welcome to Untold Archive, the channel that finds the stories of warriors, survivors, and underdogs who faced impossible situations and extracts every lesson they left behind. Today, Mauro Prosperi. A story so extraordinary that Netflix made a documentary about it. If you want to hear Prosperi tell it himself in his own words, go find episode 5 of the Netflix series Losers. It is called Lost in the Desert. Watch this video first, then go there. Because hearing him say it after you understand everything he went through is a completely different experience. This is his story. Let's go. Number 1, the man who trained for everything. Mauro Prosperi was no stranger to extremes. A former Olympic pentathlete who competed for Italy in 1984, he had spent years mastering fencing, swimming, riding, shooting, and running, disciplines that demand total control over the body. So when he decided to enter the Marathon des Sables, a grueling multi-day race across the Sahara, he didn't ease into it. He trained hard, running dozens of kilometers daily, and deliberately limited his water intake to condition himself for the dehydration he expected to face. His wife worried, but she understood this was simply who he was. In April 1994, he arrived in Morocco ready. The race began, and for 3 days everything went according to plan: steady pace, solid terrain, strong performance. Then came day 4. Number 2, the storm. The 4th stage was the race's longest, nearly 60 miles of open desert. Heat climbed past 110 degrees. Prosperi passed a checkpoint, collected his water ration, and kept moving. Then the wind shifted. Sand began to swirl, and within minutes visibility collapsed entirely. A sandstorm swallowed the landscape for hours. Prosperi kept running, believing he could still make out the trail, but there was no trail left to see. By the time the storm cleared, he was alone, disoriented, and far off course. Every marker, every runner, every checkpoint had vanished. He picked a direction with his compass and started walking. It was the wrong one. He had drifted deep into Algerian territory, nearly 200 miles from where he needed to be. Number 3, what alone actually means. The Sahara is almost the size of the continental United States, vast, largely empty, and utterly indifferent to anyone lost inside it. Prosperi had only a single day's worth of food and water left. When a rescue helicopter passed near his position, he fired a flare, hoping to be spotted. It flew on without noticing. The search effort was concentrated in Morocco, Prosperi was in an entirely different country. No one was looking for him where he actually was. This near miss with the helicopter was significant enough that race organizers later upgraded the emergency flares issued to competitors, a change made directly because of what happened to him. Number 4. The Shrine. On his second day of wandering, Prosperi stumbled upon a small stone structure, an abandoned religious shrine, barely large enough to stand in. Bats had nested inside. With no other source of moisture available, he killed them, drank what fluid he could find, and ate the rest for sustenance. It wasn't heroic. It was simply the only option left. A documentary crew later retraced his route and found physical proof. His belongings, along with the remains of the bats, confirming the account was true. By day 4, his situation had become so bleak that he attempted to end his life by cutting his wrists. But his blood had thickened so severely from dehydration that it barely flowed. The attempt failed. He took it as a signal, not a resolution, but a demand to keep going. Number 5. 10 days. He pressed on, traveling at night and using the stars to guide him, resting through the punishing daytime heat. He ate whatever the desert offered: insects, reptiles, plant matter, anything that might sustain him. His body wasted away. He would eventually lose over 30 pounds. On day 8, he found a shallow puddle of water in a dry riverbed and drank desperately, only to vomit almost immediately. His body no longer able to process what it needed most. He kept moving anyway. On day 9, he spotted a young girl herding animals on a hillside. She was part of a nomadic family. She offered him milk and helped get him to a nearby village, where authorities were finally able to reach his family and confirm he was alive. By day 10, Mauro Prosperi had covered roughly 180 miles off course and was found alive, walking on his own. Number 6. What the desert teaches. Decades later, when asked to reflect on those 10 days, Prosperi didn't describe them with regret. He spoke of clarity, of a strange peace that came from having everything unnecessary stripped away. He called them, remarkably, some of the happiest days of his life. Not because suffering is desirable, but because facing the absolute limit of what he could endure taught him something about himself that comfort never could. A few lessons emerged from his ordeal. First, reality doesn't bend to your expectations. You have to assess what's actually true and act on it, not what you wish were true. Second, survival sometimes requires doing things that are unpleasant or undignified. The tools you need aren't always the ones you choose. Third, when an attempt to quit fails, take it as direction rather than despair. Forward is often the only path left. Fourth, work with your circumstances rather than against them. Find the conditions that let you move and wait out the ones that don't. And finally, the hardest days aren't interruptions to a life. For some people, they end up being the days that reveal what a life is actually made of. Subscribe to Untold Archive. Every Tuesday and Friday, we find the people who went into the dark and came out with something the rest of us need to hear. Because somewhere in history, someone already survived what you are going through.